everyone. Hi, this is such a lovely crowd. Thank you all so much for braving the winter weather and joining us tonight. My name is Amali, and I'm the events director here at Books Are Magic. We are so excited to have Araminta Hall and Gillian Flynn with us tonight to celebrate the launch of Araminta's newest novel, One of the Good Guys. Hold for applause. Thank you. But before we get started, I just have a few logistics to point out for how tonight's event is going to go. First off, we will be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the discussion, so please start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them. After the talk tonight, Araminta will be signing and personalizing books at the alcove next to where you checked in. We'll let you know where and when to start lining up for that. And lastly, if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we would love to encourage you to buy a copy of One of the Good Guys online using the link in the live stream description. Now, let's get into this. Tonight, we are excited to bring you a true masterclass on the craft of psychological thrillers and dive into this novel's layered themes of gender, power, deception, betrayal, and more. One of the Good Guys has received praise from an incredible list of authors, including Megan Abbott, Lisa Taddeo, Alice Feeney, and of course, Gillian Flynn, who wrote, "I became absolutely obsessed from the opening page." What more do you need to know? Araminta Hall is the author of Everything and Nothing, Our Kind of Cruelty, and Imperfect Women. She has an MA in creative writing and authorship from the University of Sussex and teaches creative writing in Brighton, where she lives with her husband and 3 children. As I mentioned earlier, Gillian Flynn joins Araminta in conversation tonight. Gillian is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Gone Girl, and the New York Times bestsellers, Dark Places and Sharp Objects. A former critic for Entertainment Weekly, she lives in Chicago with her husband and children. Okay, that is all for me. Without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Araminta and Gillian.
Well, thank you all for coming out. This is so exciting. Happy to be here at this fantastic bookstore. I love this bookstore. And let's start with your book. How about that? Little novel shake up on the book event. I always want to give the author herself a chance to talk about what the book is, because I always hate to step on anything that you don't want to talk about, because this is a book of many twists and turns, in addition to being a really interesting statement on where we are with gender today, gender roles, power, and so can you basically tell us the outline of the book?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite a difficult book to talk about without giving everything away, basically, because the twist in this book is sort of the point of the book, which is not something I've done before, even though obviously in every thriller you write, you have to have twists. So I'm going to I'll just talk about the beginning, really, which is that it's the story of a man called Cole who moves to a very remote part of the south coast of England. And he's recovering, nursing a broken heart from his very recent divorce. And he just can't understand why his wife left him, because he is a really great guy. You know, he sort of, he does the dishes, he wants kids, he's really supportive of her career, all those things. And when he gets there, he meets a woman who's living in a rickety cottage on the edge of a crumbling cliff about a 15-minute walk from where he lives. And he just really wants to be her friend, and they sort of strike up this friendship, and they seem to get along really well. And meanwhile, there are 2 young women walking the south coast on a charity walk protesting male violence. And they're getting closer and closer to Cole and Lenny, and when they reach them, they vanish without a trace. And the ensuing sort of media frenzy starts when, a certain type of woman goes missing. And that's when, things start to happen.
And one of the great things about the book that I love so much is you can read it as a thriller in and of itself, or it has all these interesting conversation points to discuss what I said about the roles of gender and power, and especially in between relationships, and also online, and what happens and kind of where we are today. So Cole really thinks he is one of the good guys. And so there's this interesting dynamic between Cole and his wife where he thinks he's almost over deserving of praise. He's like, but I'm a man and and I do dishes, get it? And I'm at home and I'm very happy about it. Do you get it? Do you get how great I am? And it, it sort of made me laugh because I always joke with my husband, about like, you take the kids to the playground and all of a sudden you're this saint, amazing sex symbol hero. And I take the kids to the playground and I'm just doing my job, being a mom. And it sort of gets into that idea and how, in a way, that can be toxic in and of itself if the power dynamic gets really switched.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting where we are right now with genders becoming more, the traditional roles are becoming more fluid, and people are behaving in different ways, but actually sort of the fundamental feelings inside haven't changed in society, I don't think. And it's that thing, I think women constantly carry guilt, basically. So, when we're working, we're feeling guilty that we're not with our kids, or and when we get home, we still want to make sure everything's nice and everything. And I sort of think feminism sold us this myth about, 40, 30 years ago or something, that we could have it all. And it's such a crazy thing to want, because I don't know any man who wants to have it all. It's like the traditional, if you're looking at the traditional male-female roles, like traditionally men worked and they didn't expect to come home and do anything. But we as women, we can sort of, all that happened to us was we did everything in the domestic sphere, and then it was like, well, you can have a career as well. You just have to do both things really, really well. And what Cole has mistaken for feminism is the idea that you can just swap a role and be a hero because you are doing half of the thing that his wife is actually doing. So yeah, that was sort of what I wanted to explore in that way.
There was a commercial that I remember from when I was a kid, and it's for a sort of body bath fragrance thing, and it's from Angeli, and the tune was, "You can bring home the bacon fried up in a pan, and never ever let him forget he's a man, 'cause you're a woman, Angeli." I mean, I still remember it. I remember being a kid and being like, okay, I'm going to be so tired when I grow up. Seems like a lot to do.
And it's true. Women are tired all the time. It's like, I know. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we really are selling, you get the girl boss now, like hashtag girl boss. And it's like, yes, but don't forget all the other stuff that you're supposed to be doing in addition to being a girl boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Cole is just doing the he's just doing the other stuff, really. And still still getting all the praise.
And meanwhile, so Cole is kind of trying to start a new life. He and his wife have broken up in part because it becomes a bit of a control, right? The way he handles the domestic sphere ends up being just another way of kind of an alpha male control. It just happens to be that he cooks and cleans and wants to have a baby.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Cole, he's mistaken. He hasn't understood that because he is, he's sort of at the top of the tree of privilege. I mean, not financially, but in societally. And I guess, if you are there, it's hard to conceive of not getting what you want, because you do get what you want by default. And so he hasn't really thought about what it means to have to think about the things you want and to have to strive for the things you want even. So he believes that the things he wants are the right things just by default of who he is. And so, a big thing in between him and his wife is that he's desperate for a baby, and she sort of thinks she's desperate for a baby as well, because she feels that that's what she should feel. But actually, she's deep down, she's probably not really. And he can't conceive of a world in which this thing that seems so important to him is not important to her. And so it does start to become quite toxic between them. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of how much I can say without giving it away.
But she talks about, the physicality even of being the one who bears the child and brings the child, and what that likely in reality means. It's sort of, it's not just that I do that, but going forward, I'm probably going to be in charge more than 50%, even though you say that is.
Yeah, and your body as well. What it does to your body having a child is like. But I think it's a real. I think it's such a grey area in the gender sort of debate because women do physically have to give birth, and then we feed the child for, it is always going to be this part of life that is going to make I want to say make a problem for us, which is, because obviously there's obviously a lot of joy in it as well. But it's like, it is a hard thing, you do it, we do it at ages where our careers are just starting, maybe, or we're just starting to get successful, and that's exactly what Mel in the book is finding. she's running this business, it's suddenly becoming really successful, she's really good at it, but she feels terrible for not wanting that side of her life more than this domestic side of her life, which I think is so true. I think we're so sort of conditioned to believe that that's what we should want. Which, for lots of us we do. I've got 3 children and it's lovely, but it's like, it is also, it's really hard, and it's really, it does take things away from you, I think. And it takes you much longer to achieve things once you've had that child.
Right.
Yeah.
And also the other piece that's happening as you start reading it is reading a lot of the social media posts directed at these 2 female hitchhikers who are sort of trying to raise awareness of violence and asking the question that I think we all still ask, which is, why do women still have to, at this stage of the game, always have to keep in the back of their mind how to be safe? Always, even the least paranoid or nervous of us still have to keep in mind, well, I should ask someone to walk me to my car. I should ask, I should be careful about this. And, it's a portion, as an energy that is taken from us that we really have to always think of that little bit. And it's a little bit of freedom too. I tell my husband when I'm traveling, all I want to do when I land and get to a hotel is go for a run, and shake it off. But if it's midnight, I'm looking outside the hotel room going like, oh, I'd love to be out there, because if you do go out there and number one, something could happen, being realistically, and number 2, actually, very few people would actually feel sorry for you. They'd say, well, what was she doing out jogging at midnight anyway?
No, that was a huge sort of inspiration, I guess you'd say, for the book, or that was a real starting point for me. There was actually one day that the book is set, where the book is set is a real place. Obviously I've changed it a bit, but it's a walk that I do near my house. I live in Brighton on the south coast, and Brighton is a really big, bustling city. Well, it's not big, but it's a lovely bustling city, but it's really also, you can get to like amazing countryside and walks very quickly. And I do this walk often along the South Downs Way that is, so stunning. And it's exactly the location of this, there are like crumbling cliffs and wild seas and everything. And that is these Coast Guard cottages that you pass. And there's a woman who lives in one. I don't know if she lives there, but I've seen her there quite a few times. And every time I pass, I just think about how they're alone at night. And, I think, oh my God, I'd be so scared and everything. Anyway, I did that walk one day. And then that evening I went out in Brighton and I walked home alone at 10 o'clock at night or something. And I live very centrally in Brighton. You know, you don't have to go down many deserted streets. But I did that thing of turning onto a street that there was nobody else on. And then I was aware of a man behind me. And, you know, he quickly crossed the road and, you know, walked on. I was in no danger from him. But I felt scared. And I just thought, my God, actually, it makes no difference whether you're in an isolated cottage in the middle of nowhere or you're on the streets of a city. There's just always in the back of your mind that fear. And it's not a huge part of your life, but it takes up probably about, you know, 10% of your brain on an average day. And you're constantly like planning your route or second guessing something. And it just suddenly struck me that that's sort of what equality is in every way, not just in gender wars, but feeling safe on you know, just on the streets of or the country paths or whatever it is of where you live. And then I realized there were actually very few people in society who just know that they are going to generally be safe. And of course, no one is completely safe at any point. But someone like Cole has only ever had the experience of the majority of the time of being safe, and it must be incredible. I mean, like, it must be such a freeing feeling, and I suddenly felt like what equality meant, and so I wanted to try to write about that in a way that explored it.
Well, and so on the social media, as in real life, of course, these women become a little bit target of attacks. You know, there's a lot of nasty, misogynist, cruel, and threatening things written toward them. And, you know, that's so much a mirror of the female experience online in many ways.
I mean, I think that is one thing that, you know, post Me Too, it's, you know, you can't, there is a lot more legal regulations. You know, I think our lives haven't changed in, like we're saying, we're still frightened, you know, to walk home at night, but our lives haven't changed that much on a day-to-day level. But, you know, when I was young, it was completely fine for a man on the tube to pinch your bum or touch you, and, you know, no one would say anything. And then even when I started working in an office, it was completely fine for older men to make a comment at you, and you just sort of had to laugh it off and pretend you found it hilarious. And of course now that isn't fine, but where it is fine is online. Like, you can say anything online and there's no regulation, and it does feel a bit like the Wild West out there. And I mean, I'm not a particularly socially media savvy person, but for this book I looked at a lot of those spaces and I was pretty shocked actually by what I saw. And I think that it is, what's scary about it is, you know, we think that things have changed and we think that those thoughts have gone away and that, you know, that people have stopped thinking them. But actually, if you look online, you realize, oh no, there's plenty of people out there who just hate women and don't even really see women as fully human. So that's why it felt really important to me to include that all that sort of stuff, because it felt like, yeah, this is still a really dangerous space.
And I mean, for particularly, I feel like the more successful a woman is, the more likely, you know, you look at women in the tech industry, for instance, and how dark that can be, and like really legitimately dangerous.
Yeah.
We've reached a point where, I mean, I'm a good First Amendment person. I consider myself, you know, very liberal and everything, and at the same time I've found myself on the other side going, there needs to be some sort of limitation about this. This is actually threatening, and it can snowball very quickly, as it does with these women. Yeah,
completely. I mean, there's that in the UK, and I don't know if it's been reported here, but there's the first case of rape is being prosecuted on the metaverse, which is, you know, so I think it's you know, I think if you I mean, I don't do this, but I think if you game, you have an avatar, and apparently if you have a female avatar, you are just subject to, you know, gross sexual assault basically all the time. And obviously, because it's not physically happening to you, it's not something that's been regulated yet, but it's, you know, there's talk now that it has to be regulated, because if we are letting young boys play, or whoever's doing it.
Play it rape.
Play it rape. Then how, obviously it's going to translate into reality in a tiny percentage of cases, but it is going to translate. So I think, that is going to be the next thing that we have to tackle, the idea of how we regulate online, which also seems, I have no idea how you would, but it does feel like something's going to have to change. Yeah.
And we were talking about, in your book, there's a wonderful passage where it was saying, how much the sexual inequality even goes down to how we snuggle with each other, or how, like the idea of, what you usually see, for instance, is the woman snuggles into the man's arms and the man protects her, and she's like this, and can you think of more than 5 times where there's an instance where the man is like snuggling into the protective arms of a woman that you see in a movie? It goes down to that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think like you say it in the book, like, I think the whole idea of protection is a really sticky one. I think that we are, we're taught as young girls, when you are properly a girl, we're often taught that that's the thing to desire, like the prince is going to come and protect you and rescue you from the dragon or whatever. And it's like, actually, it makes, if you need protection, you're weaker. And if you want to protect something, you think it's weaker than you. And obviously, within any loving relationship, you protect each other and you love it, and you look out for each other. But I think it's always so one-sided, this idea that women need protecting, and I think and then it feeds into the whole idea of weakness and then being a victim. Really, that's sort of another thing that I wanted to try to avoid, like that victimhood thing. So. It is I think that's quite a dangerous trope.
What kind of, did you do specific research for this? For instance, were you did you go on certain, I for instance, I love to go on websites where, I think horrible things are going to happen. I just love, I love to lurk in places that feel incorrect for me to be in, and
oh my God, I don't, what?
Like like incel forums.
Oh right,
like I just like to sit there and go like, what's really being talked about here?
Yeah.
What is this? I'm
the one I got slightly addicted to was that Reddit, am I an asshole, which I hadn't found before then. Oh my God, they all are, obviously, but it's like
if you're asking the question.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the most obvious thing. It's like, I can't even think of an example, but I put a couple in, not that I had read, but I put a couple, I did a few Reddit posts in the book because I couldn't resist it, because it was just, but actually that was one of the more depressing ones, because, it was obviously one of the more depressing ones, but I think it's the biggest Reddit thread, and it is just filled with men bitching about women for, insane things, like that they didn't heat their apple pie or something. It is really crazy. Two really big stuff, like, am I an arsehole for not letting my wife ever go out without me, and, and checking her bank account and all that and everything. You're like, my God, there are these whole lives going on. But I had to wean myself off that. I was like, I don't need to look at that anymore. It's making me too angry. So I can imagine. I didn't know about insult websites. I might have to look that up now. I feel like that might become a new thing that I want to see.
Well, I'll be your support person as you go in. Exactly. You might need to talk to me.
I need a few web addresses, please.
What's your routine? And since you go to dark places, do you have a routine for getting back out of them?
Oh my God, probably not. No, I'm just perpetually dark. No. I don't have much of a, I do, I sort of have I don't have a routine at all, actually. I just can't, I have to write at home because I'm pathetic and need complete silence. And so that's the one thing. And then I get really bored of sitting at home, so go for long walks or go and meet people and do much less in the day than I should be doing. But getting out, I find it scarily easy to go to dark places. And I also feel, I never feel like anything's too much. I feel like people are capable of pretty much anything. So, and like, I just think we see that all the time. Like, not hopefully in our personal lives, but in the news and everything. It's like, I don't think there's much that, I mean, you go to very dark places as well, and you must feel the same. It's like, I think human nature leans towards that, and we can all imagine terrible things.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think that's certainly why a lot of people, including myself, are interested in reading psychological thrillers, because the really good ones make you go like, if I was dialed just a little bit more that way, like I could do that, or that could happen, or, you know, that sort of thing. Like the best ones make you feel like, you know, there but for the grace of God, sort of.
totally.
Like,
I mean, completely. Or therefore, you know, not just, not thinking just a little bit more. I think we all have really dark thoughts. Or I mean, maybe I'm just talking about myself, but I think we do normally, or we do have dark thoughts, and we can do terrible things. Yeah.
Like I framed my husband for my murder, but just a little bit. Then I pulled back and just wrote about it.
yeah, exactly. I know.
But so, I mean, because I do have to figure out a way to pull out of it. I do. Yeah. I feel otherwise I bring that mood with me to my family, who does not deserve to have that inflicted upon them, you know. So at the end of the day, when I've been writing really dark stuff, I will stop and I'll put on I'll watch something that makes me really happy, like Donald O'Connor and Singing in the Rain, like that dance number. I'm never not happy after I watch that, or something, you know, just something lightning like that. And one of my friends got me a little plaque that sits on my desk, and it says, "Leave the crazy downstairs." I was like, that's a good idea.
That's I mean, I'm now feeling really bad that I don't do something like that. I feel like I've just taken darkness into my life and my family's life, and they probably would say the same. So, yeah. So,
Have you taken the Am I a Sociopath test?
No. And I don't want to now.
No, exactly. So you've written 4 books that have been published in the United States, and how do you feel like your arc has been? Do you feel like one book informs the next?
Yeah, I do actually. I think that I think all writers have a theme, don't they, that they're interested in, and I think we can't help but repeat that and try to figure out what we're saying. And I did actually, with one of the good guys, I did slightly feel like I had figured out slightly what I thought. Like it felt more like it came together for me, in that a lot of the things I'd been trying to say for the last 10 years or however long I've been writing for, actually it's longer than that. It felt like a real culmination of a lot of my ideas, actually. And I think that was because we lived through Me Too, and then I just felt incredibly disappointed by Me Too, and it sort of coalesced what I was thinking. But I don't think I'll stop writing about those themes, but maybe I might move. I don't know what I'll do, but I think basically I know I'll always write dark thriller. I mean, that's why I hope I'll always write dark thrillers, and I'll always want to be political in my work without being sort of, polemic. But I feel like there has to be a theme that runs through. Otherwise it sort of feels a bit pointless, doesn't it? I would say.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. There has to be something more there to dig into. Otherwise I would get bored, I think. I would get bored just writing a pure surface level, pure plot driven. That just wouldn't be something I'd want to do.
We've discussed this before. Like the idea of plot comes last for us, doesn't it? Which is a odd way of I don't think it is an odd way, but it feels odd. Like you think that you'd come up with the story first, but I don't. I sort of think about what I want to say and what I want to talk about, and I think about the characters that I want to populate it. And I sort of just think, oh, the plot will be okay. I'll figure it out. I know, and I mean, I know where I'm going with it, but I don't plush it out. And you were saying you're the same, aren't you?
Yeah.
You just sort of.
Absolutely. I figure out the character, or I figure out, the loosest part of the plot.
Yeah.
And then I just go, okay, usually I get to the middle and I run out of the adrenaline and I'm like, what am I writing?
Yeah.
What is this junk?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Help me.
That.
Can I write really? I don't know. What am I doing?
And it is, you do have to junk a lot of words doing that as well, which is really, it's a really silly way to write. If you were going to be really efficient and produce a book a year, you would not write like that. I don't
Right.
think, but I think, I can't work out the plot until I've written one draft.
Yeah, I agree. And I usually look back on I have a whiteboard in my office where on one whole side of the wall, that's what, instead of wallpaper, I have whiteboard material and I write all over like a crazy person. And, I'll erase one section. I'm like, I don't even know what this is. This has nothing to do with my book anymore. This is crazy stuff. But the other night I was kind of cleaning it up and I saw in one corner there was a little note from my daughter and it said, I will kill you tonight with a butterfly. And I'm like, that's my girl.
Well, my daughter, when she was 4 or 5, she made and wrote a book called The Kill Book, and it was all about how she was going to kill her older brother. And my favourite entry was, put a clown in his room and he will die of fright. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I'm really proud of her, actually. I loved it, but she was so little when she did it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you grow up loving psychological thrillers? Did you
well,
movies
Patricia,
or
I mean,
books?
Patricia Highsmith was like my I mean, that classic thing of when you write your first book and you have no idea of genre, and I remember my first ever editor saying to me, oh, it's a thriller. And I was like, is it? And then also suddenly realizing that that's what I'd read and, and being like, oh my God, that's so stupid of me. I'd never realized that I was reading thrillers. And also a lot of my favorite novels, writers were like Iris Murdoch and, Daphne du Maurier, people like that. I think if they were published today, they would be published as thriller writers, wouldn't they? Because they have essentially written thrillers. And I think that's, so yes, I've definitely always been, I've always been really drawn to story and sort of meaning, I like books that do both. And I think thrillers are so good at that. Yeah. And I do also read, a wide variety of novels of any sort of genre. But yes, looking back, that was definitely what. You like Agatha Christie. You will love Agatha Christie.
Yeah, that was my introduction for sure. Yeah. I started with And Then There Were None.
Yeah.
One of the all-time greats, and then realized how much I liked it and went back, and I was such a completist. I started from the very beginning and read every single one. Went to the library. They're like, here's the weird kid again. Yeah. But she too was like the first time I went to the grown-up section of the library, and I felt it was like straying out of the kids section. I felt very cool. Yeah. Right. Let's talk about true crime, because there is that element of your book where the two women go missing and it becomes a social media and a media sensation, basically. And what is your relationship to true crime? We are in such a moment of true crime right now. I think something like 17 of the top 20 podcasts are true crime.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I have a very complicated relationship with it, but I'll let you go.
Well, I would say the same. I have a complicated relationship with it because, I'd be lying if I said I don't enjoy it. I don't love it. I don't think I'm not sort of as addicted to it. The reason I watch more of it than I should is because my 16-year-old daughter is addicted to it, and it's the only time she'll sit on the sofa with me and be nice to me and like let me stroke her hair for a minute. So I sort of
While you
love it.
watch murder.
Yeah, while we watch murder, and then as soon as it's finished, she's like, ugh, and leaves the room. But I feel very conflicted by it, because I think, making the death of women, which is what it is, into entertainment is really, really problematic. And I think that what we're seeing now is that playing out in our actual news. And just after I finished a draft of this novel, we're very near the last draft, and I was sort of wondering if, would the public have, would the media have gone quite as crazy for this story as they have? A woman went missing in the UK, and it's always a certain type of woman. They basically have to be sort of under 40, white, photogenic, and it's, and preferably have a little bit of a murky part. Well, no, first of all, you've got to think that they're really perfect. And then about a week in, they like to dig up a bit of dirt on them. And this woman was perfect for that. She dropped her 2 kids at school. She was very sort of pretty and blonde. And she went for a walk by a river, and she just vanished into thin air. And it was crazy. I mean, even for like a story about a missing woman, it was front page news when there were wars and recessions going on, and it led the news every night for like 2 weeks, and then lo and behold, they started saying, oh, she was having an early menopause and she had started drinking. And so like the whole thing was like, was she
one
drugged?
does.
I mean, I know. But also she was holding down a really good job. She was happily married with 2 kids. It was like, even if she was drinking a bit, it was like clearly not impacting her life. And then vigilante groups started forming, and they were like Google searching the area and being like, we need to look in that house. She's in that house, and breaking into people's homes. I mean, it was insane. And then she was found in the river. She had fallen in, and she had, it was late at night. It was very cold, and she had died from hypothermic shock, and there was actually no story, I mean, it was tragic, terrible personal story, but it really wasn't front page news. And that, it really made me, I mean, that felt to me like we had lived through a Netflix true crime documentary for 2 weeks, and actually they hadn't got a great result at the end, because she hadn't been found, murdered and mutilated. And it was, and I think that true crime is dangerous for that. It's making us see women again as bodies, basically. You can pile female bodies high, and it's never quite enough. And it's a bit like when I was growing up, there was loads of slasher movies, which my parents let me watch, bizarrely. I'd go to Blockbuster, and get out horror films at the age of 10. And also I was allowed to by the person serving. I mean, it's bizarre. And then I would go home. I have 5 younger brothers and sisters. We'd go home and watch them together. And they were like 3. I mean, like, my brothers still remember like watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre with like me at like age 10 and like them as at 3 or something, and it's like, and I feel like that was a time in which female bodies piled high. But I think we're doing it now in a different way of like, actually, it's real. And it's not, it shouldn't be, it should never have been entertainment. And it's like, it's really scary that it's becoming entertainment. Well, that it has always been entertainment. So yes, I wish I never watched it at all, but I can't say that's true.
Understood. Me too. I think we're ready to go to some questions, if anyone has any. Yeah.
Thank you both so much. You mentioned that you were on a walk and like you saw a house that inspired you. Have you thought about letting them know and like giving them a copy of the book to live there, or do you think it would be weird since it's like a dark book?
Well, funnily, 2 days after I get back, I've got to do I'm doing a local news piece. Then they want to interview me outside the cottage, so they have actually got in touch with her, and because they were like, does she know that you've based this novel? And I was like, I haven't based this novel on her. Like, she's nothing to do with it. But yeah, they got in touch with her, and she was like, she was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So I hope I meet her and can ask her if she lives there alone, and like, is she scared? I mean, clearly not. Yeah.
And would it be weird if you just press your face
Yeah.
against the window late at night?
Or I could do a call. I could like
Visiting.
look. I like it when I could go when it's. I mean, I'd be way too scared to go there after dark. So she's really safe from me. But like, yeah.
Back there.
For both of you, really, if you're talking about writing these characters that do dark things and like being fascinated by darkness, does the why behind the dark things that they do matter? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, yes, it matters massively because I think, I mean, that's what we were talking about, writing, believable characters. You can, I mean, if you're only sweetness and light, it matters why you're only sweetness and light. So if you're dark, it matters why you're dark. And there has to be a good reason. And that also, it's really easy to sort of, I don't know. I mean, something will have happened. I mean, some people obviously are just bad, but something will have probably happened in your childhood, really. I mean, childhood is really responsible for everything, which is terrifying. But once you become a mother, you realise how terrifying that is. But it's like, So, yeah, I've definitely always thought that through a lot. You might not put it on the page, I don't think. But I know you probably do have to, yeah. But
Yeah, and with all my books, it goes back into the character's childhood. In fact, that is often part of the mystery in and of itself, is who is this person and why is this person? And Sharp Objects is part of my first book is part of the mystery, is finding out what happened in the narrator's childhood, and that's key to the mystery of itself. So to me, the why is incredibly important, and it's probably why I don't write serial killer mysteries, because I don't necessarily want to get as much into that background. I tend to write about the main character's darkness. Mm-hmm. Oh,
Kind of along the same lines, you're talking about how the plot comes last kind of in your process of writing. So I was wondering how you're kind of manifesting the characters and the people you want to portray. Did they do anything that surprised you, or did the plot run you
Let me, I'll repeat the question for the folks online. Is the process of writing, does it ever surprise you? Kind of? Yeah, where the plot goes or where the
Yeah.
characters go, like suddenly reveal themselves to you a little bit?
I mean, the plot definitely. Like, I'll suddenly, you suddenly get a moment where it fits together. And I mean, I do think your subconscious brain is working though, because things always fit together in the end. And then you're like, oh my goodness, and that worked. And then you're like, and you sort of almost feel like you hadn't done it. But of course, you are the person who you are in control of it. I don't know. I always feel funny about that, because I mean, characters do things that surprise you, but they shouldn't, because they're coming out of your head. So it's really weird. And I always feel strange saying that. And
Yeah, I agree. That's what the
Yeah.
magic of writing. That's
Yeah.
the fun, especially if you're not plotting every single little bit and you're waiting to kind of see what happens. And people to me will say like, oh, I thought so and so was the murderer, and I'll be like, I did too. It was so weird that they weren't. Oh my god.
And I suppose that is the thing of, that's like what we're saying about writing a first draft of where you don't really know anything. I think that is, you're just pulling things together and you're getting to know them. So your character isn't really just surprising you. What's happening is, as the more you get to know them, the more you know what they would do, basically. So suddenly you come up with this scene and you're like, that's brilliant, because that's really encapsulates the character. And actually, but that's just because you've done the work.
so
You've
much,
sat
yeah.
there and done the work, basically. But it's nice to think they're surprising you.
And did you have one?
Yeah. When you're telling the story about like traumatic events and dark stuff, like what determines how do you make it interesting and exciting as opposed to like a depressing reflection on
I don't know.
The question was, how do you make dark things sort of interesting rather than depressing? Basically, yeah.
I mean, I think that is where plot comes in, actually, because like, and learning, I think suspense. Like basically, what we deal in is suspense, really, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's to do with I mean, that side of it, I think, is almost like the sort of nuts and bolts of it. Like you learn when to drop a reveal or what to hold back and all those. And not that you get it right every time or anything, but I guess that's where you're creating a bit of entertainment. I mean, I think that's really important when you're writing personally, is to remember that someone is going to pay $20 or whatever for a book, and you've got to entertain them. That is your job, So I do think that you have to. I mean, I always hold that in my mind. I try to hold that in my mind. I don't, and because otherwise, you're right. You are writing about bleak people in a really doing depressing things and having a depressing outcome. It could be really grim. So, yeah, it's sort of. That's part.
And we've all, I mean, we all have had that book where it's like, I respect this book, but man, it's bleak.
Yeah.
I choose to remove myself from this situation.
Yes.
Back there.
I was gonna. It's interesting you guys both saying that you don't have a plot at first and you write to get to know the characters. If you have in that process, if you have a day where nothing, you don't know what to write, you don't know where it's leading you, is there an exercise or a thing or way of getting into the character that helps you get back onto that train?
Yeah, the question was sort of if you have writer's block, if you're not writing toward a particular plot point, how do you kind of pull out of it, or what do you do? I have a great answer to that, actually. My advice is, you never stop writing. You don't hit block, and I hit blocks a lot of times where I'll just be like, I think I'm writing the wrong book. Like, I'm just gonna stop and try to write something else. But what I usually do is actually really old-fashioned writing exercises. I will take a character and write just a scene from someone else's point of view about the character. So, for instance, with Gone Girl, I had so much trouble figuring out who these people were and trying to get it right. And so I have entire chapters written, about like Nick's second grade teacher at the parent-teacher conferences, trying to talk about him. I have stuff from Amy's roommate at boarding school and high school. I have all these different, originally Amy's parents ran a sort of eHarmony dating service that was kind of this bespoke dating service where you were guaranteed to find your soulmate. And so I have tons of stuff on that. I just make myself keep writing, and often just do it from a different angle. And I for the most part, I say, that you can't keep it. I'll be like, it'll be someone's dream even, it's like you're not allowed to keep that. And that gives you kind of a freedom to try different things. But like, for instance, the cool girl speech from Gone Girl is the only writing exercise I ever kept because I liked it too much. I wrote it from Amy's point of view. That was back when Amy was a feminist essay writer at a magazine, which she was for a while. And I wrote that as an essay that was going to be, her pretend column in it. And I was like, well, Gillian, you're not allowed to put it in because it's writing exercise. I go, but I like it. Stick it back in. Don't do it. Take it back out. But, so I'm glad I left it in.
I was going to say I'm glad you left that in as well. But I would say the same. Like I don't. I just keep writing. Yeah, I don't really think that I'm gonna. I don't know. I feel really self-conscious when I write, which I think is one of the reasons that I can't write in public. I can't go to cafes and things like that. I just feel like such an idiot. I just feel like, ugh, that thing, And so I feel really self-conscious when I do writing exercises alone at home, which is really weird. So I'm just ridiculous. I'll just write things that I know no one's ever going to see and that it's awful. But I think that also comes from when I got my first writing, publishing contract. I had 3 very young children, and it had been sort of an act of will to get there anyway. And I just had to take any moment to write. Yeah. So there wasn't ever, I just never had the luxury of thinking, oh, I'll come back to this. It was always just like, carry on. So that's, I still just, carry on. I agree. I think if you've got something down there, you feel vaguely better about yourself at the end of the day.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, do we have time for one last one? Great. How about you?
I read the first 4 pages and I'm already so annoyed by Cole. I'm also like debating going to a birthday party after this because I like all I can think about is that I want to keep reading it.
Oh,
Yay.
that's very kind. Thank you.
My question is if you could dreamcast Cole, Mel, and Lenny.
Oh my God. Well, I don't know about Mel and Lenny, I have to say, but with Cole, I think it would be really great to have like a sort of, one of those really beloved actors, like, Ryan Reynolds or someone who just never does. He's such a good guy. And he probably is. He probably is a really good guy. I mean, I've got no idea. But
Don't
he
sue
always,
us, Ryan Reynolds.
yeah, I mean, let's because I think that's Cole's thing. He really genuinely, and he's not a villain, Cole, he is. So I think that's his thing. He really believes in himself so much. And I think it would be really fascinating to see someone who normally plays those really great, caring roles and then see, start seeing it chipping away. So, yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate it on Friday. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to everyone who asked such great questions. Thank you to Gillian for moderating tonight's fantastic conversation. And of course, thank you to Araminta for celebrating this launch with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So just a few quick reminders before we wrap up. If you're still with us on the YouTube live stream, you can buy a copy by clicking the link in the live stream description. For those of you with us tonight, I know many of you picked up a copy when you checked in. If you didn't, we have some additional copies available for purchase at the register, along with Gillian's novels. I think we have Sharp Objects and Gone Girl up there. Araminta will be around to sign and personalize your books. That's going to be happening at the alcove where my coworkers are pointing to right now. It'll all make more sense in a minute. We just ask that you please gather all of your personal belongings, line up down this center aisle, and curve around to the door. Gillian will also be around up here to sign your books if you'd like. And I think that's it. Let's give these two one last round of applause. Thank you all so much.